Hello, let's continue with the tutorial on how to create a dashboard by date range with C#, SQL Server, Windows Forms and object-oriented programming. Now I'm going to show you how to customize the dashboard components, for example, the date pickers, date menu buttons, charts and the DataGridView. Well, recapping the previous tutorial, it displayed orders performance, total revenue, profit, and best-selling products, either by the current date, the last 7 days, the current month or a custom date. To do this, you created the database, the connection, the model, which takes care of data access and business logic. Then you created the user interface and the data of the model was linked to the user interface components. Finally, we were left with this way, with the simple and basic appearance. For the case of the Today Date button, I added new order records with date and time in order to group the data of the current date by hours. As I said in the previous video, at that time I did not have order records by time, so I omitted the group by hours function. But now for this tutorial I inserted new data to also group by hours in case the date range is a single day. Well, the code is the same as how it is grouped by days, weeks, months or years. I recommend you to watch the previous video to understand this project. You can also get the source code in the description of the previous video. Alright, let's start customizing the appearance of the dashboard. For this we just need to open the properties box. Firstly we set the background color of the form. I will make a dark theme, since by default the background color of the controls is white. As a result there would not be much to customize, and the tutorial would be poor and with little information. Well, here I already have my color palette for a dark theme. You can use the colors you want. Then we set the background color of all panels. We set the font color of all title type labels. In the case of the chart control, we do them from the title property.
Don't you know? Don't you know? I'm living in shadow. Don't you know?
Okay, now we customize the appearance and behavior of these date menu buttons. We select all the buttons, and set the style to flat, then set to background color, border size, font size and color.
Don't you know? Don't you know? I'm living in shadow. Don't you know?
Once finished, we stack the buttons to the right side until the side border of both buttons forms a single border size. We do similarly for the OK Custom Date button.
I fell for fool's gold. I fell for fool's gold. What did I know? What did I know? I fell for fool's gold. I fell for fool's gold. What did I know? What did I know?
Alright, now we will make the button highlight when an option is selected. For that we go to the code. In the previous video this method was created that is responsible for disabling the custom date controls. To speed up the tutorial I will rename and reuse this method. For example, I'll name it set the appearance of the date menu buttons. This method will have a parameter of type object for the menu button sender, then we declare a variable and in it we assign and cast the parameter. Well, first we highlight the selected button. To do this we simply set the background color to the same color as the border of any button, and a white color for the text. We will now make the previously selected button reset to its default appearance values. To do that we define a field to store the currently selected button.
Yes, I did.
So to uncheck the current button must be non-null and different from the parameter. If the condition is met, we simply reset the appearance of the button.
did it all for love. And I did it all for love. Yes, I did it all.
Finally, we assign the button parameter as the current button. We call the method from each click event method of the date menu buttons. As a parameter, we send the name of the button or the sender object. Okay, let's run the form to see what it looks like. Great, the button lights up, and the previously selected button's lighting is removed. We will now make the button for the last 7 days selected by default when opening the form.
Believe in it, so I guess I'm one of them. Oh, don't you know? I fell for fools gold. I fell for.
Alright, that's it for the date button appearance customization. Now let's continue with the date pickers and OK custom date button. These should be disabled when pressing a button other than the custom date button. It is not possible to customize the appearance of a date time picker control, so we simply overlay a label on each date picker and thus create the mask effect.
Fools gold. What did I know? What did I know? I fell for fools gold. I fell for fools gold. What did I know? What did I know? You were fools gold. Yes, I did it all for love. Yes, I did.
We then center and align all the components, optionally showing the bottom border of the picker to apply an underline style.
Yes, I did it all for
Alright, now we'll open the picker calendar on click of the corresponding label. As long as the custom date button is selected, then we subscribe to the click event of the start date label. We define a condition. If the current selected button is equal to the custom date button, we select the start date picker and send the down arrow key press message. Since there is no method to do it, then the simulation is necessary. We do the same for the end date. Great, the calendar is only shown if the custom date button is selected. However, the label text is not updated when the date changes. To fix this, we need to update the label text every time the picker changes value. To do this, we create the value changed event method of the picker. We do the same in the load event of the form. It works fine. Well, we finally disable the custom date controls when a different button is selected or vice versa. In the previously created method, we add the following. If the button parameter is equal to the custom date button, we enable all custom date controls. We also changed the cursor to hand when hovering over the label, to give it the effect of being enabled. Otherwise, we disable the custom date controls again. Great. If you want, you can hide the bottom border. Alright, let's continue. In this panel for the icons, we just add a picture box control. For better appearance customization, I recommend creating your own logos or icons. You can download a solid icon from the internet, then vectorize it with design software and customize it your way. These labels are not functional yet, but they are used to show the difference in performance with the previous period. For example, for the case of today, a comparison would be made with yesterday. If you also want me to show you how to do it, let me know in the comment box. Now we are going to customize this chart. This is a somewhat complex control. It requires basic knowledge in statistical charts and to know the parts that compose them. For example, the chart area, legend, title, series, y-axis and x-axis. Let's start customizing the legend. In this window, you can set the back color you want, as well as the text color and size, dock position and among others. We do similarly for the chart area. We set a background color, in my case the same as the background color of the control. Then we customize the X and Y axis. On the X-axis, we can set the line color, or just no bottom line. Similarly, we can set the major grid line color. In my case it will be without the vertical lines. Similarly for major interval marks. If you want, you can change the width, style, and size of the lines. Here I have a color defined for any line in the user interface. Finally, we change the color and size of the text. We do similarly for the y-axis. We establish the color of the lines, or we remove it if we do not want to show it. It depends on each one.
I'm feeling so hollow. Don't you know? Don't you know? I'm living.
We change the text color, and optionally set a custom format. For example, in this case the y-axis contains monetary values, so we can concatenate a currency symbol. Well, let's see how it turned out so far. The appearance doesn't look bad. The custom currency format is applied correctly. Here optionally for large numbers we can apply another format to collapse the value as social networks do. That is, if the value is 1000, show 1K. So, we indicate the number argument, which is always 0, and then we divide the number by 1000, for which the comma is used. For more information on number formats, I suggest reading the documentation. It works fine. However, if the values are less than 1000 and greater than 1 million, you will need to apply the format through conditions in the form code. Well, now let's change the type of chart. For this we go to the series property. We look for the chart type property, and select the type we want. For example, spline, we can change the thickness of the line from the border width property. We can also set the markers for each value point. I'll change the chart type to spline area because I find it much more attractive. I'll also remove the markers as it doesn't go very well with this chart type. It is worth mentioning that the type of chart depends a lot on the types of data that you want to present. For example, it would not make sense to show the list of gross income in a donut or radar type chart. Well, we can also set a gradient style for the background of the series. We change to the color we want. If you want, you can leave it in a faded gradient style, or you can set a secondary color for the gradient. Optionally, we set a border color. Great, it looks much nicer now. However, there is empty space at the beginning and end of the series, which I personally don't like. To make the series draw from the beginning to the end of the chart area, we do the following. We go back to the chart area property, select the axes property, and set the visible margin property to false. Sorry, here we must select the x-axis.
And I did it all for love. Yes, I did it all for love. Oh, they say fools.
Alright, we optionally remove the lines from the major interval marks.
Believe in it, so I guess I'm one of them. Oh, don't you know? I fell for fools gold. I fell for fools gold. What did I know?
We do similarly for the donut chart. We set the background color of the chart area and the legend.
Did I know? I fell for fools gold. I fell for fools gold. What did I know? What did I know? You were fool's gold. Yes, I did.
In the series property we will make the donut be divided. For this we set a border width, and we set a border color. So that the donut has a divided donut effect, we set the border color of the same back color. Finally, we set the color palette for the series. If none of this list is to our liking, we can create a custom color palette. To do this, we close this window and open the Custom Color Palette property. In this box we add all the colors we want. I recommend adding the same quantity or more to the data to be shown in the chart, in this case 5 elements, because if the number of colors is less than the quantity of data, the colors will be repeated in the series, and it would be confusing to differentiate the corresponding data. Finally, in the Color Palette property, we select None. Apparently, if you set the color palette from the series, the Controls Color Palette property stops working. Microsoft often misses one or another bug. Alright, optionally we also set a gradient style. In the gradient color, you can only set one color for all slices, so I suggest choosing a color that matches all the colors in the custom palette. In my case it would be a shade of pink. Well, it was great. However, I woke up doing the tutorial, it's already midnight and I ran out of records in the database, since I only recorded order with time until the 13th, and today the 14th only one sale was made, and it is not possible draw the chart with a single point. For these cases, when the query has a single result, I suggest adding a zero value row before and after the result. Another would be to use a column chart. In my case, for a quick fix, I will delay the date and time of my computer. Alright, let's continue. Now we add icons to the total counters. Well, we finally customized the appearance of the DataGridView. We set the same background color as the panel and remove the border. Then we customize the cell style. Similarly, we set the same background color as the panel. Optionally, increase the font size, change the text color to a white hue, and finally change the background and text color of the selection. We set the color of the grid lines. Then we set the border style of the cells to horizontal only. We hide the rows header, and we disable the rows resizing. In automatic column size we set to fill, and in selection mode we set to select the full row. Let's see how it turned out so far. Great, now we will change the background and text color of the column headers. In order for the header appearance settings to take effect, we must disable the header visual styles. Finally, we increase the height of the rows. For this, we go to the row template property and set the height, for example 35. Alright, the appearance already looks great. We can also make the column of units narrower and flatter towards the right side by setting a fixed width for the column. The font size of the header set has no effect. Most likely you will not have this inconvenience. Well, this happens for a reason. I will increase the font size to explain better. For example, I will put a size of 15. As you notice, the font is still small. This is because the DataGridView inherits the font size of its container, in this case this panel. Well, to do the tutorials, I always increase the font size of the form first to make it easier to see on devices with a small screen or resolution, and by default, controls take the font size of the form or other container. Well, for the DataGridView header font setting to take effect, we need to reset the default font size of its container, in this case the panel. The default font size in Windows Form is 8.5. Once the font size of the panel is restored, we change the font size of the header of the DataGridView again. As you can see, it took the font size of the panel again, but now we can set any font size, for example 15. Well, this is another Microsoft bug that has been happening since the first versions of the .NET framework, and to this day nothing has been done to fix it. Despite the fact that the framework is updated every year, but they are problems that can be solved. Alright, that's all for this tutorial. I hope you liked it. Until next time.